Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Here with you on this Wednesday morning midweek show, Sidelines. A lot to talk about, a lot of things happening out there in the world. We're going to get right to it and talk with Dan Mathews over in Atlanta, executive producer of Southern Sports Today, the Chuck Oliver Show, and also Chuck and Chernoff every afternoon, 2 to 6 p.m. Eastern on 680 The Fan in Atlanta. Dan, I know you got a tight schedule this morning. A lot going on, SEC spring meetings in Destin. I don't know what all they're talking about specifically, but I know that storming the field and things like that are high on the agenda, and the 1-7 or 3-6 schedule are a big deal. But also just John Hartwell, good friend, AD at University of Louisiana Monroe, sent an article about what's going on with NIL. And, let's get your take first on the SEC spring meetings and what you want to see come out of there.
Yeah, the talking points were definitely out on Tuesday. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, what Nick Saban wanted to say about the schedule, where he quickly said, look, I'm in favor of us playing all Power 5 opponents, which would kind of lead you to believe that maybe he does, want to see an 8-game schedule in conference play. But also, though, too, it was funny that one of the first questions asked to him was about what does he want to accomplish at his meetings. He was quick to push back on that and say, this is the SEC's. This isn't mine. It's kind of like, I guess there's this narrative out there that if it goes good by Nick, then it goes good for the rest of the conference. And, I think that probably he was a little bit prepared for that, which, that's being savvy with the media like he is. So there's that. And then, of course, Kirby Smart, he was pretty staunch yesterday that, look, 8 games works for him, because he even talked about, your one permanent opponent. And then also, too, you're going to play everybody every so often. And he went to the point as well that power in the SEC is pretty cyclical. And, just saying he understands that Nick and Alabama have been able to do it for as long as they have. But he goes, you look at the history of the conference, it hasn't necessarily been that way. It's been, this school for a few years, that school for a few years, and kind of, around in a circle. And, the thing that he was focused on, he said, was, what is the benefit of playing in the SEC championship game? That's what he wanted to answer more than anything else. So, obviously those two, whenever they talk, they're going to wield the headlines, and they did. But I think also, though, too, I mean, you're kind of getting an understanding of why 8 games is gaining a lot of momentum over the 9 that seemingly Greg Sankey in the conference wants.
You go to you get different opinions of people saying, well, what does ESPN and what does Disney think about if you have a 9-game schedule or an 8-game schedule? They're about to fork over a lot of money. ESPN's going through a lot of changes. They're laying a lot of people off. What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, I mean, that's another thing, too. I can't remember who wrote that. I saw that headline yesterday that it doesn't look like there's going to be, any new money if indeed the SEC somehow decides to get enough of a consensus to say, all right, let's play 9 games. And if we play 9 games, then obviously, that peps up the money a little bit. It doesn't necessarily sound like that's going to be the case. I mean, if that's the case, I think that probably a negotiation with Bristol should have been had of saying, hey, look, we're going to go to 9 games. And we need this thing to be a payment plan for 9 games and go from there. But, I think that probably if, just my opinion, my feeling on this is that there was a thought that they would go to 9 games. And of course, outside pressure, call it whatever you want. And I think that it's also, too, as well, I'm kind of, I was definitely the one that was with the crowd saying 9 games, come on, play like everybody else. But now, Rob, I got to tell you, I think I'm on the other side of it, because why do you have the burden of proof? You've proven the last few years that you are the premier conference. You are the league that everybody else has to chase and has to be able to beat. Nobody else has been able to do that. So, you know what you need to tell them about, the Big Ten plays 9 games. Good for the Big Ten. They can play 9 games, and really only 2 or 3 of them in the entire conference are going to matter. The same deal in the Big 12. Well, they play a 9-game schedule in the Big 12. Same deal with them. They're not going to matter, and they just got proven in the last national championship game. Pac-12, ACC, you name it, If I'm the SEC, I just say, hey, look, we're going to do our business the way that we want to do it and the way that we know it works. I mean, it's a saying that a buddy of mine has said. There's a right way to do it, and there's the way that you're doing it. And I think the SEC needs to be the first guy.
Yeah, Dan, I agree with you. I've come to the conclusion that the 1-7 model, I like that better. That keeps it at 8 games, and you're going to play every school in the conference twice in a 4-year period. So that means, as an Auburn man, they're going to give up likely the Georgia game. They'll keep Alabama as the permanent. But if you're an Auburn fan, be honest with yourself. Since Mark Richt came in there in 2001, really in this millennium, Auburn's 7-17 against Georgia. And They are looking at it, LSU, they're 8-15. Now, believe it or not, Auburn's 11-12 against Alabama. But, Auburn has never gotten any real credit for playing a brutal schedule. On the flip side, Alabama has kept Vanderbilt around always, and out of the kindness of their heart, to help that program, and successfully avoided Florida and Georgia during the regular season, except on rare occasions, or if they played them for the SEC championship. So, 1-7 is what I want to do. I'm totally with you.
Well, I mean, it's also too, Gus Malzahn successfully lobbied to get that changed. I mean, where he was like, wait a minute here. Why am I playing in almost 2 consecutive weeks, Georgia and Alabama at the end of the season? And this was, before Georgia really became Georgia, like what we know them as right now. But they still were an ascending program. They were still a very good program. And that was still a game either in Athens or in Auburn that you did not want to have at the end of your schedule. So they were able to throw them a bone and switch that up a little bit and move it up in the schedule. I mean, you're going to have to play them regardless. But no, I get it. I mean, and that's another thing that Kirby talked about yesterday is, he was asked about possibly losing the Auburn game. And he said, yeah, look, I'm a Georgia guy. I played in it. I understand it. I love it. But he also said sometimes in the form of progress, you've got to make certain moves. And, we've seen rivalries go away, Rob. And this just in, college football was still played. So, if you've got to wait, every 2 or 3 years to be able to have that trip to Sanford Stadium or, the trip to the Plains, then I guess so be it. I mean, because we know what would happen in that scenario. The Iron Bowl is not going to go away, and neither is Georgia, Florida, wherever it's played. It's not going to go away. So I get it. But I also, too, to Kirby's point, it's just like, why do we necessarily make this harder on ourselves? The league is hard enough. And we're more or less focused on, we need to make this thing harder. For who? I mean, if you have a one-loss team, when it comes down to it at the end of the season, chances are, especially in the extended playoffs, you're going to get in. So why are you necessarily trying to make these, things harder on yourselves? If you're necessarily worried about people giving you barbs about playing Middle Tennessee State or somebody like that on your schedule, I mean, my God, if we really want to play that game right now, go look at the schedule that Michigan has this season. Everybody wants to point to Georgia and what a crap schedule they have when they want to conveniently leave out that they did not or that they did have Oklahoma on their schedule, and that game was bumped by the SEC. So, look, you can't please everybody. You shouldn't try to please everybody.
Yeah, it's impossible to do it. And I didn't think I would feel that way, but I started just crunching the numbers and reading a lot of stuff about it. You're bringing in Oklahoma and Texas. They're going to get better when they get into the league. They're going to recruit better players. And, again, I hate it not playing Georgia every year, but what did Auburn get when they got the game moved from mid-November and then a rental win and then Alabama? Well, they're going to throw in A&M or LSU. The SEC, there's nowhere to hide. And again, right now, if you're Auburn, their 2 biggest rivals are winning at an unprecedented rate. I mean, it makes what Florida State did from 87 to 2000 when they never finished out of the top 4 look tame. And Georgia and Alabama aren't slowing down. And with NIL, it's even more difficult.
No, I mean, again, Rob, you hit it right on the head. There's nowhere to hide. And, I mean, you've got both Oklahoma and Texas with historically good recruiting classes coming in. And granted, look, recruiting classes have been called historic in the past, and that's netted 10, 9-win teams a season. But the point is, you're still going to have good teams coming in when you're already adding to, I think we're going to see Auburn improve. Tennessee has improved as a program. When Florida comes back, and then notice I didn't say if, but when Florida comes back, because you can stumble on to building up a program when you have a recruiting base like they have, and Billy Napier is recruiting well at Florida. So I'm confident he will get that thing going. I think that probably Florida needs to take a page out of their rivals' books and have a little bit of patience like Florida State had with Mike Norvell. You're not going to be able to turn this thing around overnight at Florida, but they'll be able to get this thing going. Auburn as well. I mean, I have confidence in them. So, I think that this is, going to be something that, again, I think that probably they looked at what this was going to look like as a conference, and they said that, look, why do we necessarily need to make this even tougher on ourselves than it really needs to be? Yeah.
Well, another question, this article I read that John Hartwell sent me this morning, we're going to talk about it. I know you've got just a few minutes. It's like they're laundering money in the different states. I mean, Missouri has a law, and it's pretty aggressive. They can start paying student athletes right upon graduation. And this is before they've even showed up on campus. You think that's sustainable?
No, it's not. I mean, and, I believe it was Nick Saban that brought that up yesterday, where he said that, what are we doing here where it's individual states have laws and other states don't have it? So then, of course, that turns coaches into politicians. And we've seen in the past, even though they try to deny that they enjoy doing that, they do enjoy doing it. I mean, my God, there's free information.
Yeah. Freedom of Information Act. That is, Dan, hopefully, have we lost you?
Huge, propeller of that was Kirby.
Yeah.
So I think that probably you will see that. I mean, there's a reason why, Greg Sankey doesn't act, just on a whim. Greg Sankey does things because he sees them coming. I mean, he's shown you that with how he handled COVID. And also, too, I mean, he's been incredibly vocal about having, public support from the federal government on this. And I think that that's probably the way that this gets done because, it's funny, people talk about, free agency. This is the NFL. Rob, it's worse. I mean, it's worse. I mean, you see how the transfer portal is. I mean, you hear that, my God, we see a week ago, just about a month removed from being in Athens, Bear Alexander, in an apartment that on both me and your salaries we can't afford in Los Angeles. I mean,
it's ridiculous.
Look, I understand being able to earn your value, but I think also though too, I mean, I'd be the one to say, guys, this has got to be within reason. I mean, we talk about, these are growing young men. They're also kids. I mean, you gave me that type of money at 18, 19, 20 years old. The hell telling what I would have done with it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. And the problem this article talks about is the tax exempt status of these collectives, and Title IX issues are going to start coming out there. But what about the student at Georgia or Georgia Tech or Auburn that's pre-med or pre-law? Can they go out as a sophomore and practice neurosurgery or practice dentistry? You can't do that. And we've gone overboard in trying to help these student athletes calculate what they already get. We let the narrative be taken over by a bunch of radical fools. There's a right way and there's a fool's way, the old Jiminy Cricket things. But we're crazy. This is absolutely unsustainable. And I think it's going to have to blow up. Right now, we've got the tail wagging the dog.
Well, I mean, I do think that probably, what does a guardrail look like? I don't know. I mean, I have been the one for the longest time who has said that this is probably the best model in terms of being able to keep college athletics as close to it as what it is. I mean, because let's be honest here. You ever seen the movie The Program, Rob? And,
yes.
And I mean, and remember the part where James Caan, he's trying to speak up for one of his players, and and they're talking about his grades and everything. And look, this is just the bottom line here. I understand what should be important, but let me tell you what reality is. The point is, he brought up, he goes, when was the last time 20,000 people saw a kid do a damn chemistry exam? I mean, it's just, whether people like it or not, the nature of the beast is that 90,000 people packed into a college football stadium on a Saturday is going to do more for a school than a school. I mean, we've all seen those advertisements, the free ones that every school gets during a game. I mean, you talk about, the best medical program in the country. Oh, great. But then when they show the number one football team in the country, then you get kids' attention. Come on, man. I was 18 years old once too. And I was picking my college choices on, what could, look, you can say, that shouldn't be your priority. They're 18. They don't know.
Yeah. It is. And look, I know you've got to go. Dan, let's do this again next week. I want to get in more next week about this. There's a lot happening, and we'll go back over these spring meetings, but let people know how they can keep up with you, the great work y'all do, you and Chuck, and follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, appreciate it. At Dan Mathews, ATL, 1T and Mathews is how you can find me, Chuck Oliver Show, at Chuck Oliver Show on Twitter. And, riding with my good buddy William here of Uber on my way in today because I had to get a little car fix up. So, no car right now, but that's, he was getting a free show here. So I'll pass along your information so he can have you on and we can entertain the riders.
Look, love it, Dan. I love it. I'll be listening to what I do after my show's over. I listen to y'all's show. I love what y'all do. Thanks so much. We'll do it again.
All right. Take care, buddy.
All right. You too. That is Dan Mathews over in Atlanta. We'll be right back with more after this quick break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, great stuff there with Dan Mathews. Check him out, man. Put that app on your phone, Southern Sports Today in Atlanta. He executive producer of that show with Chuck Oliver, and they talk nothing but college football Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. That is 10 to noon Central, Monday through Friday. Southern Sports Today, it's a free app, and they're talking all college football. Great guests, great lineups. All right, look, going back to this article, Andy Humphrey is going to join us in just a moment from KTGR, the Tiger, up in Columbia, Missouri. We're going to check in with Missouri. I want to find out from him about this NIL law. Now, Missouri, I'm going to say, has been fairly aggressive in how they're approaching NIL. And they're going to do whatever they have to do. Every state is, but there is stuff now. This is an article out of SI.com inside the NIL battle that is splintering the SEC. We're all money laundering. Wow. And it's a deep article. I started reading it right before the show. And again, we'll cover more about it. But let me say this real quick about a couple of our sponsors. RumbleBoxingGym.com. Rumble Boxing Gym in Memphis is 1835 Union Avenue, right at the corner of Union and McLean across from the Walgreens. The classes, they are intense. It's like a 15-round prize fight, okay? You get in there, you are going to get the best workout imaginable. They're going to have the grand opening at Rumble Boxing Midtown Memphis, Saturday, June 10th, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's at 1835 Union Avenue. They'll have the instructors there. You'll be able to join. There are membership deals that are available right now, and they're growing. Already got 180 members, and they can take 300. So you want to get an incredible workout, 45 minutes. I've done it. I'm going to keep doing it. You go in there, you've got dumbbells. You're doing burpees, star jacks, jumping jacks, push-ups, dips, planks. Then you get the dumbbells involved, and it is intense. You go across, you switch to the punching bag. Jab, jab, hook, hook, gut, gut. And when you walk out of there, you're going to feel like you've been swimming on land. Works every muscle in your body. That is rumbleboxinggym.com. And if you have a car, truck, SUV that's been in a fender bender, maybe you live in Memphis, your windows have been broken, which is fairly common, very common. Tom Martin's Body Shop at GE Patterson and BB King. I've been there for about 60 years. I've known Tom 28 years. Great guy, great friend. The people in this front office will make it easy. All the paperwork and all that stuff that you got to do dealing with the insurance companies, I know you all love doing it. Tom Martin's Body Shop. You can find them on our website, sidelines.live. They will help you get your car, truck, or SUV looking better than ever. All right. NIL. I'm sure they're going to talk about it at the spring meetings down in Destin. But Commissioner Greg Sankey is there, coaches, athletic directors, a lot of people are there. A lot of our regulars on sidelines are there. We're going to be getting a lot of good intake. I'm looking forward to hearing what Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, and Mark Schlabach, all these guys have to say. But, folks, pay attention. The 1-7 schedule model or the 3-6 schedule model. What do you want? Personally, I looked at that 3-6 and I said, wow, if you're Auburn, you're going to keep Alabama, you're going to keep Georgia, and either LSU or I think Vanderbilt was even proposed as a permanent opponent for Auburn. But Alabama was told they would have to play Auburn and LSU and Tennessee every year. Nick Saban didn't like that. Well, 3-6. Yes, the Big Ten plays a 9-game schedule. Other conferences like the Pac-12 do. The Big Ten, the Big 12 has a schedule like that too. Again, the ACC and the SEC, they're going to look a lot. They're going to mirror one another. But Dan Mathews, who was on in that segment just before the break, he was right on. What more do you have to prove? I mean, you go, if the Big Ten wants to play 12 conference games, by God, let them do it. These are the dumbasses that took the cue from the Mid-America Conference back in August of 2020 and tried to shut down their football season. And then the geniuses in the Pac-12, Larry Scott, who was the commissioner at that time, paying over $8 million for the lease in San Francisco for the Pac-12 conference office. They didn't start playing until November 7th of the 2020 season. As we referenced yesterday, karma is an itch, and it's biting you on the rear end, Pac-12. Student athletes out there don't feel like that the conference has their back. You've got Oregon, Oregon State. You've got Arizona in the NCAA tournament. And I know I've left off Stanford, of course. They're going to host, despite not playing a single ranked baseball team, I think all season. But it doesn't matter. It's got to fit that narrative. RPI, no, RIP. Rest in peace, RPI. It's crap. And all the whiners complaining about the SEC getting 8 regional spots out of the 16, tough luck. You know what you need to do? Go out and get your own, put the money into it, invest the money into facilities or whatever. If you want to have a better baseball program, you got to spend money. You know, it takes money to make money. That's what the SEC is. But as far as having 8 regional hosts, it's vicious. I mean, Missouri, they got rid of their baseball coach, Sunday or Monday? Andy's going to tell us about that. But what is happening right now, there's a seismic shift, and the SEC is leading the way. I don't know what's going to happen with the ACC. I don't want to see that league dissolve. But if you go back 100 years ago, the Southern Conference had 23 members. And in 1933, a lot of them broke off and formed what is the SEC. 1954, a bunch more of them jumped off and formed the ACC. But conference expansion it's happening. As soon as July gets here, when these media days start for all the conferences, you're going to see some schools jump. We already know there's a lot of that going on. Andy Humphrey, man, how are you this morning up there in the other Columbia? We had Will Gunner on from Columbia, South Carolina, talking about the Gamecocks. But up in Columbia, Missouri, I know you've got rid of the baseball coach, but I want to ask you about the NIL rule the state of Missouri has passed. It's pretty aggressive, but what is your take on it? Can you hear us?
Yeah. Thanks, Rob, for having me on. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah,
okay.
I got you.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Missouri's NIL law? Yeah, I can. The NIL law that Missouri passed is pretty aggressive. Do y'all talk about it a lot? Yeah.
Yeah, the two main things that I take away from it is, the fact that first off, you get coaches the ability to be in the room when those athletes are brokering those NIL deals. Beforehand, it was against the rules. You were not able to be in the room with those third parties and the athletes when they were trying to negotiate who gets how much money, things like that. Now the coaches just have so much more freedom to be able to get that going. The second thing I think is the one that sticks with me the most, and that's the stipulation that for in-state recruits or athletes coming to Missouri, they can now start earning NIL money right as they sign their letter of intent. So beforehand, you had to be on campus in order to earn NIL dollars. Now you can do it a whole lot earlier, and it helps to have the in-state stipulation in there because it incentivizes kids a little bit more to stay in the home school state and to be playing for that school instead. The last couple of recruiting cycles, Eli Drinkwitz has, I think, missed out, at least so far, on some of the top in-state guys for the state of Missouri. And so anything that you can do to help out that process and try and incentivize these kids to stay at Mizzou and build up that program, Eli Drinkwitz is going to be all for that. So we saw a lot of his support for it. Of course, Dennis Gates, the basketball coach, and everybody within the athletic department seems to be on board with these changes that Missouri or the state legislature implemented when it comes to NIL.
Yeah. Are you starting to see Missouri fans embrace NIL? Because you've got traditional fundraising in the athletic department. Now you've got NIL on top of that. And these war chests are starting to really accumulate some money to the point where this SI.com article says, someone in there was quoted as saying, we're all money laundering.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. Again, it's getting to be that point now. I think almost everywhere. Missouri, I think maybe started a little bit behind the game in NIL when it first started to really ramp up. But now I think they're playing with the big boys now, it seems.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt I asked this question of Eli Drinkwitz at Media Days last year in Atlanta. I said, have you ever looked into it or thought about what it would be like if you could marry and merge the enthusiasm of the Cardinal baseball nation, which is incredible, living in Memphis, growing up, listening to KMOX. Of course, we had local stations, but I've always loved 1120 AM KMOX, Jack Buck, Mike Shannon. Just it's tradition. And trying to merge that enthusiasm to Missouri athletics. And he was like, good question. He came up to me afterwards. And he said, that was a good question. He goes, it's still making me think. But look what the Braves do, Andy, with Truist Park there in Atlanta. They call it Braves country. And they are married in to the college football, college sports fan in the Southeast like no other professional franchise I've ever seen. And I know your partner on your daily show is involved with the Cardinal Baseball Network.
Yeah, he covers the Cardinals every single day, and so we make that a big part of our show too. It really is intertwined a lot because Cardinals fans call themselves Mizzou fans too. So it does make sense that that crossover there is pretty natural around these parts.
Well, it should be, but anyone that knows baseball, 11 World Series titles for the Cardinals. That's the only program, the only Major League Baseball franchise better is the Yankees with 27, and they've had every advantage known to man and then some. And here the Cardinals are. Not that St. Louis is a small market; it's a pretty big metro area. You've got 35 or 40 suburbs like Laclede and Ladue and Brentwood. I used to work for A.G. Edwards for 8 years. I was in St. Louis quite a bit. Go down to Laclede's Landing, the Arch. It is a great city. Union Station, Deerdorf Steak. St. Louis, and one of the first things I noticed when we were up there for 3 weeks of training, September 30 years ago, was the street vendors selling the pig ear sandwich, or as they call it down in the Mississippi Delta on Highway 3, a listener. A listener.
Yeah.
That's a pig ear sandwich.
Right.
Thank you, MJ, for that one. Or a Coolickle, a frozen popsicle made out of pickle juice. But Andy, every day y'all are talking Mizzou sports and all. And people will say, well, Missouri should be in the Big Ten. They should be in the SEC. Missouri's committed to the SEC. Their fans, the ones that we see in the Boot Heel, we're in Memphis. They're no different than we are. So where's their strongest support between Kansas City and St. Louis?
Oh, I'd say it's pretty even between the two. I don't think there's one city that favors it more than the other. I guess you could say that technically in St. Louis, there's maybe less competition for it. There are plenty of Illinois fans in St. Louis too. Yeah. And it's a big melting pot when it comes to that. In Kansas City, you've got your Kansas and your Kansas State fans. Both of those cities are still pretty big mixtures, but I'd say if you took a straw poll for both of those cities, they would come out majority Mizzou supporters, and you probably wouldn't see that big of a tipped scale between the two cities either. So you've got some support in Chicago, you've gotten support even in Dallas. It is a pretty wide footprint, even though there are some dense areas there. Yeah.
Okay. Now you're bringing in Oklahoma, you're bringing in Texas. You got a history with them from the Big 12, and Missouri's won over the years 13 conference championships in football. They've had some success, and I know when they came into the SEC in 2012, the next 2 years, 13 and 14, they did go to Atlanta and play for the SEC championship. That's there's still some schools in the league who have never done that. Ole Miss has never been to Atlanta for the SEC championship. A&M has never been. So they can do it. What's the temperature right now in Columbia and the appetite for whatever it takes, win whatever is necessary? Are they as crazy as fans at schools like Georgia and Alabama and LSU and Auburn?
You'd have to ask those fan bases. You can pull as many Mizzou fans as you want, and you'd probably find a good amount of fans that are just as crazy as some of those craziest fans for Georgia and Auburn and Alabama, things like that. When it comes to competing for championships, you're right. Sometimes Mizzou's a little bit forgotten about. People sometimes forget they competed for those football championships just about a decade ago. They ran into some pretty good years there, and they transitioned with a whole lot of momentum. And since then, they've kind of taken a step back, especially in football, kind of been in that, tweener area, trying to get back to relevancy. But when it comes to expanding the conference, whether you think they should be in the SEC or not, what you think is the best fit for the team and the conference that they would have been in, maybe Big 10, maybe Big 12, things like that. Bottom line is, when Mizzou made that decision in whatever it was, 2011, 2012, to make the jump, there was almost no other choice they had. Like, they had to make sure that they had some sort of solid foundation, some sort of forever home, to make sure that they had the support from a conference and that they could have some sort of equal footing. I know that was a big selling point, like the fact that it seemed that in the Big 12, there were a few schools calling the shots, and you could probably parse out the schools that I'm talking about when I say a few schools. One school, go right ahead. But hey, again, that's what they wanted to try and get away from. The SEC tends to make you play ball a little bit more with everybody, and so the fact that they made that move has, I think, benefited them in this era of realignment. It's about the best move that they could have made. You can still think that they fit better in a different conference, but in the end, usually that's not how it works. Like, you gotta make sure that you're not the hunted in an era of conference realignments, and that's what Mizzou had to make sure they did.
All right, look, hold those thoughts. I want to come back because Gary Pinkel, I thought, was a hell of a coach. He went to Kent State with a guy named Nick Saban. I think they were teammates for Coach Don James up there. That was the worst thing that happened to Missouri, was when he left. And we're going to talk about it right after this with Andy Humphrey in Columbia. Andy, when Gary Pinkel left, it was a disappointment, but he had been there for 14 years and showed what Missouri could do. And Eli Drinkowitz has come in and said they're going to build, the wall. A lot of coaches will say that around St. Louis, but there is a boatload of college football talent. We all remember East St. Louis High School. I remember it growing up. That was a superpower, like Moeller in Cincinnati, or Valdosta, Georgia High School, what they call Titletown, USA. Is that happening right now? Because in Missouri had a top 12, top 15 recruiting class, and they missed on a few guys, but I mean they're stockpiling some talent up there.
Yeah, I mean the last recruiting cycle that they had, I guess it was a couple of years ago when, they were close to the top 10. There were maybe even some lists who had them in the top 10. I mean, that obviously built a ton of momentum, and it was well-deserved for a guy like Eli Drinkwitz, who was coming off a year that I would say exceeded expectations. It wasn't the best of years. His first year, he was 5-5, but that was the COVID year. You were playing all SEC games. You're only expected to win 2 or 3 of them. He ended up winning 5. And so after that, he's had nothing but 6-6 seasons since. And the momentum, I think, is maybe dying down a little bit as far as the recruiting game. I mean, last year, Mizzou did not have the top 15 recruiting class to match what they had done the year before. And now this year, again, there's a whole lot of time left. We're not even close to talking about the end of recruiting season for 2024, but they only have a couple commits right now. And so that does have to get stoked a little bit more if Eli Drinkwitz wants to keep that momentum going. You talk about, the in-state recruits. He did a really good job of that in that earlier class that we were talking about. But again, the last couple of years, some of those top 10 Missouri guys have looked elsewhere and decided to commit elsewhere. So Mizzou does need to get a little bit more of a better hitting percentage in those in that group of recruits if they want to keep things going. But yeah, you obviously have to hammer those areas, both St. Louis and Kansas City, if you want to have any shot of getting the top kids in the state.
And y'all do go to that Chicago area. I think Illinois is the 9th or 10th most talent-rich state for high school football in America. And as big as Chicago is, there are a lot of players up there. But you get outside of Chicago, the further south you go in Illinois, it ain't any different than Alabama or Mississippi or Arkansas. It's farmland. And it's, where you've got farmland, you've got paper mills, you usually have very good high school football. Looking at this NIL, going back to this new rule, you can get paid once you sign your scholarship with Missouri in any sport, male or female, boy or girl. There are men's sports, there are women's sports. Ain't no in between. You start getting money. I mean, is it a collective? Is it everyone gets the same amount, or expand on that?
Well, again, it's for in-state kids, so you do have to be in the state of Missouri for it. But yes, once you sign your NLI, you can start earning that as much as possible. Now, it doesn't mean you automatically get it. I mean, you can start negotiating or things like that and start earning the money once you sign on the dotted line. But yeah, it just gives that little extra push that Mizzou is trying to get as far as making their sales pitch to kids in Missouri. Because again, I mean, Missouri's got some football talent too. And I think this rule does kind of benefit Eli Drinkwitz a little bit better because, A, you got to make sure you get more kids just because it's a football roster and you got so many spots to fill. Two, I think the football talent in Missouri is pretty well documented compared to maybe some other sports. I mean, Dennis Gates has to recruit nationally anyway to try and fill out spots for his basketball program. Same with some of the other coaches at Mizzou. So I think it is a rule that's it's not intentioned that way, but it does benefit Eli Drinkwitz's program a little bit more when he tries to go in those rooms, go in those homes to those 17, 18-year-old kids and tell them, hey, this is something that not a whole lot of states are going to be offering you the chance to start earning your money as early as December. So, I mean, unless you want to try those out, we can give you this option here that allows you to stay in state and earn a little money while you're doing it.
Yeah, and this SI.com article, it mirrors what I've been thinking all along. It said the average payout to a student athlete in the SEC is anywhere from 10 to 50,000 if they're getting NIL. They're not all getting it. And then you might have 5 on average making 100,000 or more. And those are the ones that we're hearing about. They already get, I believe, cost of attendance money as it is. But what I'm really, really, really tired of hearing is this narrative. They got to have enough money to go out and get a pizza and take a date. They're already getting money, student cost of attendance. And let's be honest, if you're a star football player or an athlete at Missouri, you're the quarterback, whatever, you're not going to pay for too many beers or meals, and people like you coming in there. I think we were forgetting what the student athletes are already getting in terms of education, healthcare, and all that stuff. Don't you think that stuff should be emphasized more?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. It definitely does. We have kind of forgotten what the value is already for college athletes to come to some of these bigger schools, especially the bigger schools. I mean, when we talk about the SEC and other schools like this, I mean, they're obviously getting a whole lot more. And then some of the athletes that don't get the looks from, the big Power 5 or maybe even the mid-major schools. Maybe they go to D2, D3, things like that. I mean, it boils it down a little bit less. And so, I mean, we think in the terms of what the big time athletes would be getting anyway. But what I would argue is that, it allows folks to open the door and say, look, maybe there's an athlete at a mid-major that's has a personality that deserves a little bit more compensation and is able to make money on their own and things like that. I think that's kind of more of what the rule intended, but you're right. I mean, the fact that, the money has gotten so big, I think it characterizes how much we value, big time college football and big time college athletics in this country. And that's what people are willing to pay for it, to get the biggest and best names. But at the same time, I don't think those who were wanting to legalize NIL right away and have it be open season realized that it would get even this big, but that's how big it's gotten. And that's the world we're living in.
Yeah. All right. Next question. SEC meetings down in Destin, Miramar at the Sandestin Hilton, I believe. A lot on the agenda. Commissioner Greg Sankey, the 1-7 schedule model or the 3-6 schedule model. That would mean a 9th game. Which do you favor?
I like the 9-game model. I just think it makes the most sense if you're in the SEC. Eli Drinkwitz made the point yesterday, referencing Commissioner Sankey. It would be a bit of a bad look for the SEC to be the only Power 5 conference that played an 8-game schedule. Like, everybody's moving to 9. You might as well move to 9 too. And yes, it means that 8 of your schools are going to take on an extra loss, and it could be the difference between, making a bowl game or not, or making the college football playoff or not. But I think in the end, I want to see better football games. I don't want to see, 3 games featuring an SEC school and an FCS school every single year. Just selfishly for myself, I want to see some of the best teams play each other. And that's why we watch anyway. We want to see the best matchups. We want to see what these teams can do, challenging themselves. And, Eli Drinkwitz kind of supports that too, which is kind of breaking the mold a little bit, because some of the lower funded schools in the SEC are not necessarily favoring the 9-game schedule. He's kind of breaking away from that a little bit and saying, look, I'm in favor of better matchups. I'm ready to see, these rivalries be maintained. You can keep a lot of the secondary rivalries that might not mean as much as the big ones, but they're still meaningful to the folks who are involved in them. So I just think with the way that we've fallen in love with college football, it's about the regular matchups. It's about, the fan experience. It's about, just seeing the best caliber football that we can possibly see. So the SEC should embody that as much as possible by staying lockstep with these other Power 5 conferences and building a similarly typed schedule as those other conferences.
And I looked originally, I liked that 3-6 because in the case of my school of Auburn, they would keep Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. Or again, I keep thinking Vanderbilt was thrown in there. I'm like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But ironically, after Auburn hadn't played Vanderbilt, but a handful of times since 1955, maybe 17, 18 times. But anyway, then you start thinking about the 1-7. You're going to play every school twice in a 4-year period. So if you stay at a school for 4 years, you're going to get to play at home and on the road. But yeah, the Big 12 and the Pac-12 and the Big 10 all play 9, but the SEC is different. And I agree with you about the bad games, but when your program's really ginning, you're going to see your school play. You're not going to see that other team play. You're going to see your school get better. But in the case, listen to what Nick Saban says. You're telling me I got to play Tennessee, Auburn, and LSU every year plus those other schools. Well, Mr. Krabs in the smallest violin in the world,
Yeah, exactly.
coming out there.
Right.
Now, if you're Auburn, you're going, wait a minute, Bama, you've been playing Vanderbilt, and then you've successfully avoided, for the most part, Georgia and Florida during the regular season, except on rare occasions, or you play them in the SEC championship. Look, not denying Alabama doesn't have a great program, but when your path, you look at Auburn, Coach Dye called it Amen Corner. Late season, I remember in late season when I was in school, there was a 4-week period where Auburn played Florida, Florida State, Georgia, and Alabama. But it was Florida, Georgia, Alabama. Amen Corner, the back 9 at Augusta. No one really wants to give Auburn a lot of credit for having to play the toughest schedule in the SEC year in and year out. And I think it's like, you know what? To hell with it. In Auburn, if fans don't like losing Georgia as an annual opponent, you win. Well, we're not going to even have divisions anymore, are we? If you're 1-2, though, if Georgia's 1 and Auburn's 2, you're going to play in Atlanta anyway. But I am glad we're getting rid of divisions.
Oh, me too. I would get rid of, not just here, I would get rid of divisions in almost all sports. Like, just have everybody play it, or not everybody play everybody, but at least have some sort of regular system where you're not, confining folks to geographic constraints when it comes to scheduling. I mean, with how big these sports are, travel is something that we've overlooked a little bit, and it's just such a nationalized thing where I don't know if we need geographic constraints on these things anymore. So I agree. And to your point, like, Nick Saban complains that he's going to get these 3 same opponents every single year. We're going to play the other ones every other year anyway. Like, this is like you said, avoiding Georgia, avoiding Florida. You're only facing those teams once every 7 years right now. So, I mean, it's something that is going to make everybody's schedule a little bit tougher once this eventually gets implemented.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is, look, Alabama has the greatest tradition really in all of college football. Used to be Notre Dame for a long time, but they hadn't won a national championship since 1988. Spare me the academics, or we know that. School's hard everywhere. All schools are good. Missouri's a great school. And I'm going to tell you, I got these figures on endowments of the SEC schools. And would somebody tell me what they do with this money? Because college tuition is doing nothing but increasing. But Texas has an endowment of $42.67 billion. Okay. Texas A&M, 18.24. Vandy, a private school, a little over 10.21 billion. Then you got Oklahoma at 2.7. Florida, 2.3 billion. Alabama, that's the whole system. University of Alabama, Huntsville, University of Alabama, Birmingham, 1.87 billion. Missouri's right there, 1.75 billion. Georgia, 1.685, Kentucky, 1.684, Tennessee, 1.5, Arkansas, 1.466 billion, Auburn, 1.05 billion, LSU, just over $1 billion. That's shocking with all the gas, natural gas and oil money down there. South Carolina, just under $1 billion, Ole Miss at 775 million, and Mississippi State at 689 million. Now, again, what do they do with that money? Have you ever asked anybody? I mean, I've got a text here from a listener down in Live Oak, Florida, who says, "Can somebody give me a definition of what all these college administrators are doing and getting paid for? Because something has to give. Because the cost of college for going to an out-of-state school for a kid, it's unbelievable. And these endowments, what are they there for?"
Yeah, beats me, man. That's a question that for someone that makes a little bit more money than I do. But hey, I think it kind of lends to the fact that Missouri in that list is kind of middle of the pack, and so I think it could be a way that they try and make sure that their reserves are a little bit better for rainy days or things like that. I would think that they have got to find a way to build their budget a little bit more. And that's honestly what I think should be the best goal for the athletic director, Desiree Reed-Francois, to just make sure all these sports are being supported as much as possible. And these athletes are being supported as much as possible. So whatever you can do to do that has got to be the priority number one.
Yeah. And again, we've seen some examples of, the Leah Thomas guy competing as a woman and against Riley Gaines in swimming. Wait till that thing, I hope we get nip that one in the bud. I mean, but Title IX is going to make its presence heard with NIL money. I mean, right now, I think you can give it specifically to whatever sport you want it to go to. But look, I mean, women's. It's a free market. The money where you cannot make men watch women's sports. Hell, women don't watch. If they're not good. I mean, people are going to watch the best. My wife doesn't. She's a Tennessee Vol for life. She watches, football. She goes to football games with me and all. We're going to figure all this stuff out, though, Andy. That's the main thing. And people get all worried about this scheduling. Yeah, again, if you play them, if you keep 3 permanent opponents or you do the 1-7, well, if you're going to, but you'll play everybody twice in a 4-year period anyway. It's not like the current model. Georgia has never played at College Station. This will be the first year for them to play there. Now, a lot of that may have been to do with the virus, the year of the lockdowns in 2020, which were draconian. But they're going to play. But Missouri last year just played down at Jordan-Hare Stadium for the first time ever. And I would never pull against my Auburn Tigers. But when Arkansas beat Auburn, I was madder than a wet hen. But I was like, maybe Ryan Harsin will go back and take up residence in Boise, Idaho. But I still hear that whining. You got 15. You stole $15 million in your buyout, dude.
Yeah, sorry, Mizzou couldn't get that done a little bit sooner. They couldn't hit a 25-yard field goal to maybe expedite that process.
That was my point. That has to be the most because Missouri. I think that they've got a passionate fan base. They've played in the Liberty Bowl a number of times. I've been to Columbia. That's where we stop always on the way out to South Dakota. If we leave town late, we stop and park in the Cracker Barrel and eat over there in the corner. So we're the first ones in the door at 5:30 or 6. But beautiful campus. And, Faroe Field, I go back to what I said at the beginning. Their fans, are they dialed in and saying, look, whatever we got to do to win in the SEC, let's do it? Because I'm glad they're in the conference. It gets us exposure, St. Louis, Kansas City, but it also gets into Chicago. You talk about that reach they have up there. There's a lot of it, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's been a pretty good hotbed for some, at least most Mizzou students. I remember when I was first going to Mizzou, I met at least 6 folks that said they were from Chicago before I met one person that said that they were from Missouri. Like when I was just at the dining hall, just trying to meet people, and everybody said they were from Chicago. And oh, wow, this is pretty insane how many Chicago folks are here. So, yeah. Those big metropolitan areas are huge for this university. And yeah, they're starting to, I think, build a little bit more, I guess, trust with their fan base that, look, this can happen. Like we can compete in this conference the same way that a lot of these teams have already been doing. Just give it time. And then you become the same part of the culture as everybody else does.
Yeah. So did you say you are from Chicago? Where are you actually from?
So I grew up in Texas, actually.
Yeah. Where?
Yeah. Houston.
Okay. Yeah. I imagine Missouri has a lot of, you were in the Big 12 for a long time, the Big 8. Missouri fans, the ones that I know, they want to win just like we do, and the rest of the schools in the SEC do. So it'll be fun. But you're a Cardinals fan. Got to last before I let you go. What's going on up in St. Louis? We have Dudley Dawson on the show. He'll be on tomorrow from hogville.net. He is a Cardinals junkie. Of course, every Cardinals fan I know is a Cardinals fanatic.
Well, yeah, that's the way it goes.
No other way to be.
Oh, no, definitely not. Well, anytime you almost get shut out or almost get no hit by the Kansas City Royals, then you're going to feel a little bit differently about your team. That happened earlier this week, but yeah, it was a rough start. It's not indicative of who the Cardinals are. I think they're a better team than that. But the problem is now you got to win at basically a 95 win pace in order to get back into the playoff conversation. That's hard to do, even for a team that's built this way. So somehow they got to make sure that they avoid too many more bad weeks if they want to stay in it. Yeah.
Well, look, I love baseball. We got Auburn baseball coach Butch Thompson about to jump on with us and talk about the regionals and play. And I just think it's great. Baseball, there's a revival of baseball. America needs 3 things to be great. We need baseball strong, NASCAR needs to be strong, and we need to extend duck season. And we got it all, okay?
What else do you need?
That's right. Hey, tell us how people can follow you, and let's get you back on more often, Andy, because, you're bringing in Oklahoma and Texas, and now you're not out there by yourselves with Arkansas, and it's just going to get better And I love it having you on here to get your insight. And like you say, a lot of Chicago people, but it's expanding the reach of the conference. But you do stuff every day, and let them know.
Yeah, you bet. Our show runs 4 to 6 p.m. Central on KTGR. We've got a phone app, and you can listen online at ktgr.com, and we've got podcasts up there too. So we talk all Mizzou sports, all Cardinals, all Chiefs, everything like that.
All right, look, we love hearing from you. We're going to do it again here in the next couple of weeks. Have a great day.
Thanks, Rob. We'll see you.
You bet. All right, let's bring in Auburn baseball coach Butch Thompson and Franz Beard's a baseball junkie down there, GatorBaitMedia.com in Gainesville. And Coach, we talk a lot of baseball. That was Andy Humphrey from the Tiger up in Columbia, Missouri. And I asked him this question that I asked to Eli Drinkowitz last year at SEC Media Days. I said, Coach, if you ever thought what it would be like if you could marry that enthusiasm of the Cardinal baseball fan base, the Cardinal Nation, into Missouri athletics. And he said, man, that's a lot to think about. And he asked me afterwards, he said, that's a good question. He goes, I'm really thinking about that. Well, you got that at Auburn. You're located across the street from the football stadium. But we were on a group text thread the other day, and I told Franz this with a bunch of my Auburn buddies, and everybody was wanting to buy tickets. They went so fast. Was it that fast? How excited are you to be hosting this regional? And by the way, I want to give you a compliment. My wife and I were talking about you yesterday. Not only are you a great mentor, great husband and father to your 3 daughters, and to your athletes on the baseball team and you and your assistant coaches, but you give people great advice. So if you ever retire from baseball, you are the new Bob Newhart, man, because you're able to calm people down. And you gave me one of the best bits of advice I've ever been told. Don't let the moment be bigger than what it is. And I love when I send you a text after a game, win or lose, your reply is dominate Saturday, dominate Sunday. So congratulations on back-to-back regionals for the first time in school history. And to say that baseball is growing in popularity is a definite understatement.
Well, thank you, Rob. Franz, nice to meet you. I've heard your name several times.
Well, I watched your ball club come in here, and y'all had opening night against Brandon Sproat, and not many people can say they've done that. Y'all absolutely smoked him. And
the rest of the weekend was not as fun as you know.
I can't imagine why. Come on now. But, when you can beat Brandon Sproat, you can beat anybody. And that's the one thing I look at when I see Auburn going into this regional is Auburn can beat anybody. Don't sit on Auburn, because if you do, you're going to pay a price, I believe.
Our league's so good. And Rob, back to your comments, it's a big deal for Auburn baseball to do something you've never done before in your program's history with the people, the men that have put the uniform on. It's a big deal. The preparation of our league, to Francis' point, is what prepares us for the postseason. The Southeastern Conference got unbelievable respect in this process of the 64 teams being selected. I know it's tough if you're outside the league, and we'll take every arrow that's thrown our way. Getting 8 host sites and 10 teams overall is a big deal. Just a couple of points, as we went through half of our SEC weekends for us as Auburn, when we went to Florida, they were number 3 in the country. When we went to Arkansas, they were number 3 in the country. When we went to South Carolina, they were 24-1 at home and number 2 in the country. The very next weekend, we come back and we faced LSU, who had, at the time we faced South Carolina and LSU, they had not lost a series the entire year. And to beat them, LSU number 1 in the country. So we're prepared. France, I don't know how we're going to play. I think it's a little bit secretive because how many of our teams perform so well, but we've won 9 regional games in a row. So that's 3 regionals in a row. So I know the Bucks got to stop it at some point, but we're excited to get this back in our home ballpark. I got a group of guys that have stayed in the fight. We haven't had that where we've been in the top 5 the entire year. We've had the deal where we've been kicked to the curb, thrown under the bus, and absolutely stayed together and pieced things together and continued to try to be competitive in this amazing league. And another thing I'll say about the SEC, on opening day major league rosters just a month and a half or so ago, 2 months ago, there were 88 former SEC baseball players that were on opening day major league rosters. That's 33 more than the second Power 5 conference.
So that's
our league is good. It's strong.
This is double baseball.
Yeah, when I got into the SEC 22 years ago, was my first year. We were trying to figure out the combination of how to compete with the, Skip Bertman taught us how and got us going in the 90s, but we're still trying to figure out how to beat the West Coast because you would get to that point, and outside of LSU, it was a struggle. I think Georgia started it, and then LSU perfected it, and then over time you've seen the shift now to the East. You can see it in the whole setup of the NCAA baseball, but this is an amazing time, and I'm telling you, from being a part of this conference, it's better today than it was 22 years ago. The coaching, the facilities, no question, and absolutely the players, and you can see it across the board.
I'll say this about it. I don't think people realize that the 30-game SEC schedule is a marathon. Any way you look at it, it is not a sprint. Nobody sprints to the finish. LSU was sprinting, and LSU ran out of gas. South Carolina was sprinting, and South Carolina ran out of gas. Auburn started slow, but Auburn had, it's kind of like watching these milers run on a track meet, and all of a sudden you see that guy come around the bend on the last lap, and all of a sudden he looks like he's ready to run the 220, and he's just sprinting and he blows by everybody. And that's kind of what Auburn was at the end of the year. And I thought you did a good job of bringing your team, and I don't think people realize how young your team was this year, or still is. I mean, Mr. Irish, he can hit for me any day. I mean, every time he swings, you expect a line drive. You just do. I mean, even his he's like Jack Caglione in that. Even his bad swings, you want to take pictures of them, And I'm just so impressed. What I've been so impressed with the SEC is it is a marathon, and this is why it's so good, because every other league in the country, and that includes the Big 12 and the Pac-12 and the Big 10, give me a break, and and even the ACC, they'll have 3 or 4 teams. They don't have 14. They fired the coach at Missouri, and I'll tell you what, Missouri comes up there and wails the baseball. I mean, they got some hitters on that ball club, and if they hadn't had the pitching injuries, who knows what they might have done. Scott Strickland got fired at Georgia. I thought Scott Strickland's a really good baseball coach. It just so happens that these other programs, these other schools have been able to load up on more talent than he does. And there's only so much talent to go around, and so much of it comes to the SEC. And it's like you pointed out, 88 players on SEC rosters. We got 88 players on SEC rosters because there is the commitment everywhere in this league to be one of those teams that makes it to that 64 team sprint to the finish.
Yeah, I think another thing too, France, is I'm a coach, so it's hard for me to be a talking head, to be honest with you, because Scott Strickland's a dear friend. Steve Beazer, being in the league so long, I respect the league and I want the best for the league. I actually was on the regional. What I try to do all year long, I sit on a committee here for this regional advisory committee where I'm trying to create the best benefit for every team in the SEC as the coach that represents them for the postseason. And, Steve Beazer absolutely does an amazing job. The guy played in the big leagues. The guy is an amazing coach. When we played them the 4th time in the SEC tournament to open up, they had changed their lineup. They had come out with a whole different scheme and things after just playing us a 3-game series. And you can just tell how well he's coached with what he has to work with. I know that. I mean, maybe the casual fan can't see that. And Scott Strickland, I mean, he's so young. He absolutely will hook up with another program and lead another program. And his track record's been good his entire career. So I think the world of those guys. And I think about it being a coach myself, because at some point in time, I'll if I don't get out before they get me, I'll walk down the same path. That's just what we sign up for. And we absolutely know it. But, back one more point of like why the SEC should be able to garnish as much respect in the postseason is I looked last year, we were one of 4 teams in the College World Series, which is half the World Series field. When you can do that at the end, I do think it helps you back up and make sure that, understanding how worthy our teams are to potentially be in the postseason.
I like your ball club.
Yeah, I do too. And I was going to say what Franz said, Ike Irish, Case and Howell. Is he the Iron Man? I mean, Ernest Hemingway would be proud, the old man in the sea. How many years has he been there? And half the team was new this year. And then Coach Schoenrock comes down here. That's such a cool story with you. He coached you, and now he's back with you. And you said, I played bad cop. I think quote of the year of you being on this show, and always say, Butch will be with us till late June. I'm an optimist. Late June means you're at Omaha. But you said you kicked the anthill. That was one of the best quotes. I'll talk about that.
Well, when you kick an anthill, man, it goes every which way. So I thought it might have been a mistake at the time. I still don't know. Maybe if I would have just stayed circled up, it would have been better. But I think a coach has 1, 2, or 3 bullets during the season. I think if you start using more bullets than that, I think you lose the ear of the players. You lose a little bit of the trust. You probably seem a little dysfunctional. But I do think if it's at the right time and it's sincere to make things better, if it's a solution. And solution, I'm not always looking for an answer. Solution, I'm just looking for any improvement whatsoever. That's baseball. Sometimes that's a solution. And when I kicked that anthill, man, we just started, and it happened, Franz, when we headed down to Florida. I mean, we had a reliever starting and 2 relievers. All 3 starters were relievers. Cannon, that's the only start he's had this year, was against Florida, against Sproat in that opening deal. So Vail has ended up staying there, and really that second half has been one of the best pitchers in
If you hold these thoughts, we just got a couple of minutes when we come back, Coach. We want to keep you on schedule. Franz Beer, GatorBetMedia.com, Auburn baseball coach Butch Thompson, Rob Browne here with you on Wednesday Sidelines. Right back in just a minute.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Coach Thompson, a few more minutes. I know you've got, again, they're stacked up like planes on the runway at LaGuardia at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon trying to get out of New York. Lots of people. I'm getting, and you are too, I guarantee you are. Hey, man, Browne, how do we get tickets? I'm like, I don't have a crystal ball. Show up with some walking around money like Jed Clampett's the best advice I would give anybody. But isn't this a great problem to have? Yeah, doggy.
I think that's the way to say it. My family's rotating games, if you can believe that, my immediate family. So I do have 3 daughters, and I got a new grandbaby that I'm real proud of. But
That's right.
we're having to rotate. These are good problems to have. I do think that our tickets sold out in 5 minutes. We had done some advanced seating, but then that 5-minute click, there was a drive and a push that's immediate. So I think hosting last year was huge. Our fan base is built out pretty good. And, we got about a 4,000 seat stadium, which I think is proper size for us. We're doing a ton of stuff starting here in July to our facility. So I think the timing of hosting back-to-back and the energy in the ballpark and the growth of our fans is pretty exciting. But it's a tough ticket this weekend. And we got a parking deck, that I know is going to be loaded up. And then right center field, there's an organic space in the wall that we put out there last year. So we even offered tailgating this year. I saw that yesterday. So I'm really happy of our athletic department to go all in on our sport and doing some tailgating and tents and stuff that people can reserve. I know our ticket office partners with StubHub because I got a bunch of tickets. And if I can't fulfill my family, I can use this as a PSA to tell everybody I can't get anybody a ticket for this weekend. If that'll head somebody off, that'll be great. But these are great problems to have. And again, just another signal to the growth of college baseball because going to Omaha in 19 and then going again last year and serving on the All-American committee and having to go every year, whether my team's there or not, you can absolutely – our sport is still growing. We're in a phase where our sport is growing. And again, you just look at these ballparks, you look at these players, you look at how important it is to win. And all 14 schools, France mentioned it a while ago about the 2 turnovers in our league. All 14 schools are committed to this sport. Make no mistake. Yeah. And that's what makes our league second to none because there's not a weekend or there's not a school in our league that's not committed to this sport.
Oh, Georgia fired Scott Strickland. Georgia came into Florida and they had a ball game where that freshman Condon proceeded to put 2 balls in orbit. I think if you go at it about 9 o'clock tonight, you can see it circling the sky along with the one Donnie Davis of Pascagoula hit against us when I was at Macomb, Mississippi in 1967.
No, it is. Look, friends, I'm with you. And Coach, what I like is the respect y'all have among one another. I've got friends that work at every firm in Memphis. We're all friends. We're competitors. But that's the best thing about it. I know you're on a tight schedule today. One last question. A lot of coaches have rituals before games. Some of them eat Little Debbie cream pies. Franz likes to eat a hot dog with sauerkraut on it. What do you do? Do you got Mama sauerkraut? Mama Goldberg's. What do you do? First time I met you, you were eating I think a Mama G's all the way, Mama's Love all the way steamed. But what do you do before each game? Because you were, like you say, you're a duck. You're calm on the surface, but underneath your legs are spinning.
A little bit different. I wish I was more exciting. I like some time by myself. I actually, honestly, if you're asking the question, I just like to, I like to pray and get quiet, and I just, ask how I can make a difference and support my team and let the boys play. I want to be a decent enough coach that the players, when it starts, they get to run their own show. And they don't rise to the level of competition, so to speak, like the Navy SEALs say. They sink to the level of their training. I want them to be so prepared that they can run their own show. And I just want to be guardrails, and I just want to be there to help and support. I try to touch them and fist bump them, during batting practice before a game. Yeah. I ask my coaches, do you need anything? Can I help you with anything? I think my style is more of a servant. And then, we don't have all the wristband stuff. Our pitchers aren't looking at their forearms. We're one of those few programs where there's none of this stuff hooked up to us. Our guys are just pitching, making their own decisions. And I think it makes a stronger player at the end of the day. And, maybe we're not caught up with the times per se, but I think we're unique. We're not like everybody else. And I like that about us. And that's how we run our program. But I want to be quiet. I'm a trash compactor. I can eat anything. So we got a new Buc-ee's here. I could eat one of those breakfast sandwiches every day if you're trying to get me to pick out my food of the day. But I just try to prepare to be good, be strong, and help anybody I can. And I know doesn't sound like much, but that's my routine.
Now, before you go, I gotta tell you my best Auburn story in Auburn baseball. Frank Thomas comes here, and Frank was still playing football, and here he is at 6'5" and 280 pounds, looking like King Kong. That day, he hit a ball at Old McKithen Stadium. He hit a ball, and he hit the O-Dome. I mean, but later on in that same game, Florida had a center fielder who made all SEC named Brian Duva. Frank Thomas is there at first base. Brian Duva hits a single, gets on first, and he's standing there by Frank Thomas, and it looked like father and son day at Yankee Stadium.
I love it. God, Coach, listen, let people know how they can follow you. We'll let you go and look forward to talking with you again next week. And as always, thank you for sharing your time with us. It means the world to us.
Yeah, enjoyed this morning, guys. I tell you, this transfer portal opened yesterday, and I think there's 10 Zooms, and we were double booked here, so I'm going to jump on a Zoom. This recruiting is it doesn't matter how I feel. This is our new day, so we're working away at that. But if anybody ever needs anything from me, it's simply Butch Thompson at auburn.edu. And again, enjoy the visit this morning.
Thank you so much, Coach. Good luck. Good luck this weekend. We'll be down there. Appreciate it.
Great.
All right, that is Auburn baseball coach Butch Thompson, War Eagle. Love having him on here. And Franz, yeah, think about when we were in school. Frank Thomas was in school at Auburn, and we used to see him. You'd never seen somebody that big at first base. I mean, and they kept him on football scholarship the whole time he played baseball. Coach Dye did that. But yeah, and speaking of the O'Connell Dome, man, there's a little mold and fungus up at the top of that thing. That thing is what, 35, 40 years old?
It's 40, opened up in 1980. So this will be
43.
now they gutted it and basically renovated it and everything like that. And they put lipstick on the pig rather than build a new one like what Auburn did. Auburn, I got to tell you what, I love the Auburn arena, and I wish that Florida had the foresight to go to Auburn and to Ole Miss, because the same guy built both of those arenas, and take a look and find out what a really classy arena can be, where at Auburn, you are no more, the farthest seat from the court is 43 feet away. Yeah. And that is a marvelous thing. It's a great experience. The fans are right. It's like, you could call it the reach out and touch arena, because you really do feel like you can reach out and touch the players. You're so close to them. And I think that Auburn arena just plays right into Bruce. I think that Chris Beard at Ole Miss is going to generate excitement there that they've never seen or heard or had before. Of the Texas Beards, of course, you know.
Yeah. I'm with you. Listen, that pavilion in Oxford is right on top. You fall down on top of the court. The noise is deafening. But Chris Beard he's going to do what he's done everywhere he's ever been. He's going to win. He's going to win really, really a lot of games.
Well, he is, and the SEC is tough, and it has gotten exponentially tougher when you add in a guy like Chris Beard, who knows what it's like to get his team to the Final Four. You think about it right now in this league, we've only had 3 SEC schools that have ever won a national championship in basketball. Florida's won 2 of them, Arkansas's 1, and Kentucky's won 8. That's it.
That's it.
And I think that people downplay the SEC because we've only had those 3 schools. But you look at the number of schools that have made that trip to the Final Four. Georgia's been there. Auburn has been there. Alabama hadn't, of course. But, I know you Auburn people love that. But LSU's been there. On and on and on. You've got schools that have been there. South Carolina even has been there. it's not going to be that long before we're going to see SEC teams other than Kentucky winning national championships in basketball. We had the same thing going in baseball for the longest time. People said, well, LSU. Well, LSU used to has won like five national championships between like 1988 or 89 and 2001. And they've only won one since. But you look at, since that happened, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Florida, Vanderbilt have all won South Carolina. You got 5 schools that have all won national championships. Winning and getting to championship games is infectious. When somebody other than LSU went to the College World Series and won it, it was a very big deal. And when somebody gets, when Florida got there and won back-to-back, it was a big deal, but the league didn't capitalize on it. I've seen the league making the effort to capitalize now. And I give that credit to Greg Sankey. I think Greg Sankey, you hear me talk about him all the time and say he is the smartest guy in the room, period. I don't care what room you're in. You could be in a room of astrophysicists, and he's still going to be the smartest guy in the room. He may not know diddly squat about astrophysics, but I guarantee you those guys are so tunnel visioned that 99% of them can't talk about anything else. Greg Sankey can talk about anything, anytime, anywhere. You bring the subject up, and he will know what he's talking about. The entire sports scene in the SEC is exploding. College sports is exploding. And now we have this teensy matter that Nick Saban brought up yesterday. I sent you a little excerpt of what I wrote today. And it is time for us to take that next step in the SEC, and that is to realize football's paying the freight for everything else. The players, we've come to a point in time where it's time to pay the players. They're taking the risk with their bodies and their minds and whatever like that. They're going out there. They're the ones that are going out there, and 40 years later, they can't walk because of what they did playing football. Pay them, because you have your gymnastics team, you have your sperm whale harpooning team, you have your intramural squamish team, all these teams that you have, your equestrian team at Auburn, which is really good. All that is funded by football.
I think, believe it or not, Greg Williams, Auburn's 6-time national champion equestrian coach, told us a few weeks ago on the show, they don't take any money from football. I think they are completely self-funded. And that is rare. You're right about it. It is really rare. I think, look, if you pay the athletes, college football players, then are you going to be opening yourself up to Title IX lawsuits? And who knows? But let the free market work this stuff out. And NIL money is going to go. You ever noticed when you see these solar wind panels and solar panel farms on the side of the road? They've got weeds growing over them and all. They're all government funded. If that stuff was so good, the private sector would have embraced it a long time ago, wouldn't they, Franz?
Oh, I agree. I despise solar energy, but my company, we're going to be building a solar farm in West Texas.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we're doing it is the government gives us the government is going to give us a 30% tax credit on it immediately. So we've got, we're in profitability almost from the first day because of that. And
it's interesting.
And I hate solar. Do you know why? The sun doesn't shine 24 hours.
That's right.
The battery technology isn't such that you cannot, I had somebody the other day say, well, the batteries will take over after that. The batteries store. They don't create energy. People are brainless when it comes to this.
Yeah.
we could go on and on for the rest of the year about that. And I feel bad for the pansies that believe in all this stuff because they're clueless.
Well, Franz, let me interrupt you here and just say this about solar wind panel. You're right. The sun doesn't shine all the time. I was watching an episode with my squaw here, Audrey, a couple of nights ago of Yellowstone, one of the past episodes, and I think the son of Casey, the son who was a Navy SEAL. He plays the livestock commissioner in Montana, and an old rancher out there came to him and said, look, one of these new folks from California that's moved in has put the cattle guards out there, and I can't move my herd through there. I got to get through there, but it has to cut through his property on the edge of it. Well, he's been a friend of their family for a long time, and old Casey goes over there and confronts the guy. You've seen the episode, and it's this kind of, just elitist, squirmy, Weasley-looking guy comes out, and the only reason he's put him there, he goes, I don't want those cows on here. And he admits that, he goes, what are you doing out here from California? He goes, I'm raising llamas. He goes, I get a tax break for it. And Casey takes him and puts him in a vertical suplex, as only Gordon Solich can say, here comes Tojo Yamamoto. Oh, my, off the rings. And he locks him in there under the cattle guard and just leaves him there. But, again, my youngest son's out in Jackson right now in Moose, Wyoming for the 4th straight summer. And there are all kind of laws that are being put into place out there to keep these outsiders that are coming in that don't respect what goes on out there. You know what? You get your government tax break, stay in the Silicon Valley or wherever you are. Don't California, Montana, or Wyoming, or Idaho.
Yeah. Leave your politics where you came from.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick commercial break. Be right back with Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Man, Franz Beard, we're going to get into your column right after this break. This is great stuff. Franz, if you would, GatorbaitMedia.com's Franz Beard with us here. Final segment of the show today. We have covered a lot. Started off with Dan Mathews at Southern Sports today over in Atlanta with Chuck Oliver. They're on right after us, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. Put that app on your phone. And great stuff from him about the spring meetings, what's going on down there, the 1-7 schedule versus 3-6. And I agreed with Dan. I've just come to I like the 1-7 because you're going to get to play everybody at least, 2 times in a 4-year cycle. And in some cases, you may play them again if you're playing them for the SEC championship in Atlanta. Now, that means Auburn would give up a permanent rivalry with Georgia. But what is Auburn getting for playing the toughest schedule year in and year out in the SEC? Not a whole lot. 3-6, you got 9 games. So what if the Big Ten plays 9 or the Pac-12 or the Big 12? Who cares? And I think the ACC will do what the SEC does. They typically do. But Franz, I just unloaded a lot on you. Start unpacking it one T-shirt at a time. You're at camp.
I'm a 3-6 guy. And,
Okay.
and the reason I'm a 3-6 guy is this. I believe the traditional rivalries mean something. I don't, I think that if it goes 1-7, it's going to create so much havoc with all this stuff. You're going to lose games that are important. And I Greg Sankey mentioned that the other day, and Greg's a 3-6 guy, and I agree with him on that. And the reason being is that you got to preserve what the SEC. What has made the SEC so good?
History, tradition, heroes.
You look at the Big Ten, and the Big Ten. The football's not great in the Big Ten, but they've got some magnificent rivalries.
Yes.
The old Oaken Bucket, Paul Bunyan's axe, and all this other stuff. There are people I know who are Big Ten people who are still pissed off that they added Penn State, who are still pissed off that Rutgers and Maryland and Nebraska are in their league. They think that, how dare they?
Yeah.
They liked the Big Ten when it really was 10. I know people to this day who say the SEC was a better league at 10 teams. And, I've always felt, for example, if you really want to get serious about college football in Division I, what we need is 8 12-team leagues. 96 teams, 8 12-team leagues. Your college, you only talk about people say, well, we got to deal with player safety. Well, fine. Here's how you do it. You got 8 12-team leagues. The championship game is your first game of the playoffs, okay? Then all of a sudden you got 8, and then you got 3 more games. Boom. Slough off a game. Now all of a sudden you play 11 games. The championship game is number 12. And then if you lose in the championship game, you can still play in a bowl game. That would make more sense. But, of course, that makes sense, which is why it'll never happen. But we've got to get a handle on the sport. I think 3-6 is a better deal, and the reason I think it's a better deal is this: preserve those rivalries. At the same time, everybody's playing everybody. And quite frankly, I would much rather see the University of Florida have a 12th game, have a 9th game in the conference, for example, against Vanderbilt, than I want to see Samford or Chattanooga or maybe even a school from like Charlotte. I realize those schools need the money and they've got to have the games, but what we need is we need a second-tier championship in the worst way.
Yes,
we need a second-tier championship. Give these other folks an opportunity to play for something besides coming in here and taking paycheck games. Trust me, ESPN is so if ESPN had a choice between playoffs with the group of 5 and running the Western Walla Walla Bowl, where everybody can get frostbite, or something. Yeah. The Boise State, the famous Idaho famous potatoes bowl. Who gives a rat's ass if you got that trophy in your case? You don't, Yeah. Besides that, I'm waiting for the first player to lose 3 fingers because he got frostbite playing in that bowl game, and it's going to happen. Trust me.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting question from Krusty the Clown in Carrollton, Georgia. Do you want traditional rivals preservation over spots in 12-team playoff? Various opinions. Not sure what is exactly correct. That is from our good friend Krusty the Clown, who eats every day at the Big Chick in Carrollton, Georgia. Hello, Krusty. I think I've heard of Krusty before from The Simpsons?
The University of West Georgia. Roger Kaiser won an NAIA basketball championship at West Georgia with a point guard named Footsie Walker, who was absolutely a magician. I
love it. I went to soccer camp there in Carrollton, man. Oh, my God. Was down at the beach in Destin during the summer. I think I was in 9th or 10th grade and took the flight up there to Atlanta and took the gray bus over there to West Georgia. A lot of great people in Carrollton, including Bill Hamrick and Krusty the Clown. All right, Franz, you wrote that. That's a great column. How are we going to save college sports? We got the tradition. And I want to play as an Auburn. I want to play Florida every year. I want to play Georgia every year. I want to play Alabama. I want to play Tennessee. I want to play LSU. You get to the point where there are so many great rivalries, and it's tough. I mean, it's a diametrically opposing argument.
Yeah.
1-7, 3-6. But
you get
basically the model we have now is terrible. You know what I'm saying?
It is. It's horrible.
Georgia's going to play this year in College Station for the first time ever. And Missouri last year played at Auburn for the first time ever. What makes a conference, Fran? Isn't it everybody's playing each other and the fan bases all know one another?
Well, one of the worst things that, in my opinion, that ever happened was that the University of Florida and Georgia, by the way, Georgia does not play in Aggie Land this year.
Oh, I thought they did.
No.
I was wrong. I stand corrected.
I double checked that, and they play Tennessee, Ole Miss, Missouri, Florida, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Auburn, and South Carolina. Those are their games. So it's a rotten sketch. You're right. It's a rotten way of doing things.
Yeah.
But I miss Florida, Auburn. That was a great rivalry.
Yeah.
There was Florida fans loved going up there. Auburn fans loved coming down here. Treated each other with a lot of respect, and it was an enjoyable series. Great. People don't realize that 83 game, there were more future NFL players on the field at one time than at any other ball game in history. 57 guys who played that game played in the NFL.
Well, I remember that game. 28 of them were from Auburn, or 26 from Florida. I remember that was a great matchup. Tight end Ed West, Leeton, Alabama, Colbert County High School, tight end number 85 against Wilbur Marshall, great Florida linebacker from Titusville, Florida, Astronaut High School. You know who else went to Astronaut High School? Chris Collinsworth. Pretty damn good receiver.
Yeah.
But, Franz, here's a little bit of trivia. Good God, you are good. You were amazing. Here it is from Wesley Duncan, listening down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, said, West Georgia's Roger Kaiser that Franz Beard just mentioned, his two daughters were Sigma Nu little sisters at Auburn. And I remember Jill Kaiser. And a lot of great people from Carrollton. Franz, my God, you move over the guy from the Dos Equis commercials. You are the world's most interesting man. Frank Duffy is on a West Coast tour right now, traveling all over the place. I'm going to get the two of y'all on here together, and it's really going to be good. But Dos Equis, here's your new man, Franz Beard. Love hearing this. Interesting. Here's another question brought up by another one of our listeners, Clarence Beeks in North Georgia up on the lake, says, tell Franz that's a huge hit to the budget if you have to give up a game. If you play, I guess he's talking about a 9-game. If you played a 9-game schedule, one year you're going to have 5 games. One year you're going to have 4. I go back to this. We had a visitor, a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago, Tyler McComas from out in Oklahoma City, Norman. And that's the same ADI, I'm pretty sure, because he said that where he lives in Oak City, Bricktown, to Norman to the stadium is about 21-minute drive. But, the average, get this, and I'm getting somewhere with this, so connect the dots. He said Oklahoma, when they play West Virginia, they may bring a couple of hundred fans. out there. Not that they don't have passionate fans. They do. But Texas Tech, Kansas State, they don't really travel. He said the SEC, I said, Auburn comes to Oklahoma, they're going to bring 6,000, 8,000, 10,000 without tickets, Then you get into this part of it that I think is really cool. He said, working with the Chamber of Commerce in Norman, they make on average about $11 million on a home football weekend, the Norman economy. He said the Chamber of Commerce sent representatives to Fayetteville, Lexington, KY, a little string music. And then they went to Tuscaloosa. He said in Tuscaloosa, they make about 3 times that. Do the math. 3x11, not minus, not plus, not $33 million.
Sure.
This is big stuff, man.
Well,
you don't give up a home game is what I'm saying.
You're not giving up a home game.
If you do 3-6, though.
Well, in a 3-6, you don't give up a home game. The difference is this. One year you have 5 SEC opponents, and that means that you don't give up a home game. The next year you have 4. The year you have 4, you bring in suddenly you decide you're going to play UCLA or you're going to play somebody else. You're not giving up a home game. The difference is this. That when you go to that 3-6 model, you're not going to have room for a 1AA team. You're not going to have Chattanooga or Eastern Kentucky coming in to we'll take a beating for beer or whatever it is that they get. That's not going to happen. You're not going to lose a home game. The difference is this: you're only going to have 5 SEC games one year and 4 the next.
That's what I'm saying.
So
in terms of a conference
it creates opportunities to bring in somebody decent so that the fans do not have to endure another ball game. One guy told me this past year because Eastern Washington came to Florida, and he said, Eastern Washington came here because that's where Old Yeller Jim McElwain once played quarterback, and that game was scheduled years in advance.
Yeah. Well, here's a comment from one of our listeners in Sylacauga, Alabama, Basil Rathborn. You gain half a game a year with the 3-6 deal. Interesting, Basil Rathborn. Not Sherlock Holmes.
Yes, it is.
No split, Sherlock. Interesting point. What about that, Franz? You are generating a lot of questions on the questionometer.
Well, here's the one thing I tell everybody. 3-6, what it does is it preserves your rivalries. It gives you that extra SEC. The 3-6 is better for the fans, period. I don't care what anybody says. It is better for the fans because they're not going to have to endure that 1AA team or that absolute bottom feeder from the depths of the group of 5. You're going to bring in an SEC team, which, with the exception of Vanderbilt, travels. You think about that. You're going to have 16 teams in the SEC, and 15 of them travel. Yeah. Vanderbilt's going to love this because now they add another game in which they will have fans in the stands. Instead of Vanderbilt playing Northern Colorado for a home game or Northern Illinois for a home game, all of a sudden they've got Oklahoma coming to town. They've got the Aggies coming to town. Every year, it is a boon for the economies because our schools travel.
Yes, they do. Here's an interesting comment from Bolt Upright, Beverly Hills, California. I'm a Georgia grad. Growing up in the South, we always had what we called the Rent-A-Wins or the muffins, but paying off a muffin like Georgia Southern has always been our model. Why can't we just stick to that? That question or comment from Bolt Upright in Beverly Hills, California. I wonder if he knows Dash Riprock. Good God, where do they come up with these names?
If you still want to play Georgia Southern, you still can. You're going to have 3 games in which to do it. Now, one of them is Georgia Tech. Okay, so you got 2 games. So you got 2 games to schedule your Georgia Southerns and whoever like that. There's nobody going to hold a gun to your head and say now that you got 2 games left. So, okay, I got to go out there and schedule somebody who actually can play a little bit of football. Not that they don't, they do a good job at Georgia Southern for their level, but you can't, and God knows I do remember why Will Muschamp got fired. That was 2013, and when Georgia Southern came to town and beat Florida without throwing a single pass in the second half.
Yeah. Oh, I remember it. Well, here's another comment from Junior Samples in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Says, all this rescheduling talk has made me wonder if when the SEC does go to 16 teams, what rivalries in an absolute, nut crunching time are going to be preserved at all costs. And is there any one school in the league? Man, I didn't know Junior was this advanced with his book learning. Is there any one school that can wield so much power that the rest of the SEC has to bow to them? Question from Junior Samples, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Didn't Junior famously say that's BR 549?
He did. You got to remember something. Up in Tennessee, he hauls the documentary.
Damn right it is. I watched that show it was Sunday afternoons, wasn't it?
It was in prime time. It used to be the must-see TV on Saturday nights, except
used to be
season.
Used to be. You can go to MeTV. We watched yesterday the Virginian last night, just a marathon of the Virginian. There's so many channels now. You can forget what time it is, but yeah, Junior Samples. I didn't realize he could generate those kind of questions. Look, we've run out of time. Franz, man, I got about 7 more questions that just came in for you, but we've run out of time. This has been great stuff. We're going to be back on tomorrow. But bottom line, you are GatorBaitMedia.com, folks. If you're a Gator, that's awesome. If not, you still ought to subscribe to this because you're going to learn about Florida, the SEC, the big picture, Buddy Martin, Franz Beard, Daily Thoughts. You talk about what Franz writes in the morning. We don't get newspapers that much. This is show prep. This is how good this stuff is. I get it in my email box every day. But Franz, again, thanks for joining us. And most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We have the greatest country in the history of the world. See that flag behind me, next to the Hams Beer sign? Bottom line, go out and bless other people today. We're all blessed. Go help other people. Junk in your head, junk out. Positive in, positive out. But Franz, again, tell them, what are y'all talking about tonight on the Buddy Martin Show?
Well, what we're going to be talking about, Florida hopefully winning the NCAA golf championship today. The Gators had 2 miracle finishes yesterday. Yu-Shin Lin in the morning goes birdie, birdie, birdie to come from way back when. And then Ricky Castillo in the afternoon destroyed Florida State. He's down 3 at the turn, and he comes back and wins it in 3 playoff holes. He wins it on the 3rd one. He hits about a 12-foot putt after Brett Roberts of FSU missed by this much. Our guy, Ricky Castillo, nails his 12-footer. Florida wins. FSU in the – I feel bad for – I feel bad for that kid. I know we got to go, but I got to tell you something. We saw in FSU losing why college sports is the best.
Yeah.
Because this kid who missed that putt is surrounded by teammates, and he is sobbing. He can't stop.
Yep.
You don't see that in pro sports. You do not, but you see it in the college game because, the SEC has that slogan, it just means more. Well, it does mean more to these kids.
It absolutely does.
These kids are never going to play professional sports or whatever like that. This is their crowning achievement. To be able to play for a championship in a college sport is a crowning achievement for 98% of all the college athletes.
It really is. And you know what, friends? That young man will probably be country club champion back to back to back and cut all kinds of big business deals on the golf course because he learned how to compete against the very best. I love it. Folks, God bless America. We'll see you tomorrow. We are out of here. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Thank you, man. That was awesome.
Thank you.